Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the City of Kettering Planning Commission for Monday, March 4th, 2024. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Miami Valley Cable Council for televising and taping tonight's meeting for rebroadcast on Channel 6 and streaming live over the internet at mvcc.net. It will also be recorded and available for later viewing on mvcc.net. Since this meeting is both audio and videotaped to form a complete record for possible appeal to City Council and/or the courts, it is important that anyone who wishes to address the Commission will need to come to the lectern to speak into the microphone and give their name and address for the record. The Planning Commission is a volunteer, independent body appointed by Council, whose mission is to hear all bodies involved and subsequently make a motion to approve, deny, continue, or recommend the application. All action by the Commission can be appealed to the City Council. At this time, I'd like to introduce members of the Planning Commission. On my far left is Ken Lackey, our Assistant Secretary. Next is Carol Fisher, the Secretary. On my immediate left is Connie Gaw, the Recording Secretary. I'm Don Ruthman, the Chair. On my right is Troy Urbis, Vice Chair. And to his right is Ray Waskey, Commissioner. Member of staff present this evening is Ryan Homsey, City Planner. First item on the agenda tonight is old business. It is approval of the minutes of February 5th, 2024. Do we have any comments on the minutes as presented here this evening? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. If there's no, right, second. All right, if we have no other discussion, Connie, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Waskey?
Yes.
Mr. Lackey?
Yes.
Mr. Urbis?
Yes.
Mr. Rathman?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is new business. It is a conditional use for 3880 Kettering Boulevard. This is a public hearing. It is PC-24-003. Mr. Homsey.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a conditional use for a very unique warehousing and distribution use at 3880 Kettering Boulevard. The applicant is here so the property in question is at the eastern corner of the intersection of Ebert and Kettering Boulevard, kind of highlighted in red on the screen there. It's just to give kind of a feel for how the property looks. This is a shot looking southwest along Kettering Boulevard. The last user in the building was HSI Security, which is a contractor's office, and they were there for a number of years. And before that, it was McGowan Brabender for a few years, and then I think originally and before that was Feltz, which was a office supply company specializing in, I believe, printers, copiers, and fax machines and things of that nature. So the building is very unique. It has a berm in front of it. If you go by the site today, they've already started doing some of the landscaping work, which has involved removing some of this overgrown ivy. I'm not sure what species it is exactly, but they're going to replace that with some more typical shrubs and trees that you might see at a building in the city. This is looking northeast from Ebert, kind of through the parking lot on the back side of the building. You can see the dumpster enclosure here. They'll be putting an opaque gate on that as a part of this project, and this is the main entryway for the building. And this is taken looking at northwest up Ebert. This road kind of on the left side of the screen is Ebert. You can see Kettering Boulevard further forward beyond the stop sign. And this is one other view kind of looking northeast toward some of the adjoining residential properties to the southeast. And the main reason I put this picture in here is to show this existing 6-foot-tall masonry wall that's there today. That's a very important part of the screening plan for the property, and the applicant is going to paint it, repair it, and keep it there to help screen this use from the adjoining residential properties. The property is zoned B business. There it is outlined on our zoning map, and again, this type of use is considered a conditional use in this zoning district, which is why we're here this evening. I already mentioned some of the proposed changes to the site. The biggest visible change people will see is, in addition to painting the building, is replacing a lot of that old landscaping. And what's on the screen now, this is the landscaping and site plan we had gotten for the site that went out as a part of your packet. On Friday, we got an updated plan based on some of the comments staff provided that really answered most of the questions, most of the comments staff had. So again, just a quick overview, they're going to update the landscaping, they'll add the required bike rack, add the required opaque gate to the dumpster enclosure, and the required kind of pedestrian path from the sidewalk on Ebert. Plus, they're going to beef up the screening between the residential properties and the subject property. Also included in the packet was that site plan with some comments that staff provided. If you read through all those comments, most of them dealt with screening between the adjoining residential properties and the subject site, along with some extra screening between that garage door kind of on the north side of the building and some of the surrounding area. And essentially every screening related comment that staff provided on that set has been responded to and is taken care of on the most recent plan that we have. So there's really and this is that updated plan today. You can see some additional trees along the residential properties, some taller evergreen shrubs, and the other smaller red circled areas. So they've really responded to pretty much every comment that staff had. There are some proposed changes to the architecture, nothing major. On the side facing the residential uses, they're going to take one section of those windows and make them a little bit bigger, kind of seen on the bottom picture there. They're going to do the same thing on the side facing Kettering Boulevard, and zoning does allow that, so there's nothing wrong with that proposal. Now to get to the use-specific standards and the general conditional use standards. Again, warehousing and distribution uses are allowable conditional uses in the B zoning district, which is why we're here this evening. And also included in the packet, I'll let the applicant, he's much better than me at giving a description of the use, but the use that's planned to go into the building is a company called Oberwork. I believe they've been in business since 1991. They are focused on selling and shipping out very, very specialized and very, very powerful binoculars. And I believe they're the #1 company in the world that sells these. I believe you're the #1 company in the world that sells these kind of binoculars. Thank you. World's leading supplier of high-powered binoculars. And when we looked at the use compared to our zoning code, the use that made the most sense was warehousing and distribution. So it's not really a standard distribution use where you're going to have these big semi-trucks and heavy trucks idling throughout the evening. The main distribution is done with just typical UPS, FedEx, and maybe FedEx vehicles that you see driving through neighborhoods every day today. And I'll let the applicant give a little bit more of a description on the proposed use. So getting to the use-specific standards, all structures shall be located at least 25 feet from any residential district or residential used property, and the building sits about 62 feet, give or take, from the nearest residential lot line. Standard B, a finished masonry wall meeting the requirements of the zoning code at least 6 feet tall shall be provided. There's an existing one that they're going to paint and repair and help and maintain, so that is conditionally satisfied. Standard letter C, all such industrial uses shall be conducted entirely within an enclosed building, and that standard is met. Standard D deals with access and on ensuring that vehicular access shall be onto such adjoining streets as may be determined by the zoning administrator. And this is more based on preventing any additional or unreasonable traffic hazards on surrounding streets, and they're not proposing to change the access to the site at all. There's a one-way access point from Ebert that then empties out onto Kettering Boulevard. It's operated this way for a number of years. This use is probably a lower traffic generator that's been on the property in the past, so this standard is met. And then the last standard deals with ensuring that the use meets all of the conditional use standards. Staff is recommending a few conditions, but so that standard is conditionally satisfied. Now getting to the general conditional use standards. #1, the proposed conditional use shall comply with all applicable regulations of the zoning code. I'll just read what we've put in the staff report. Since the subject conditional use represents a change in use on the property, the legal nonconformities on the site are required to be brought into compliance with today's zoning requirements. Further, since the proposed modifications to the windows on the facade of the building facing Kettering Boulevard exceed 10% of the facade length, that elevation is required to be brought into compliance with today's architectural requirements. And for the most part, the building already meets them. There's not a lot of additional changes that need to be made. The applicant has submitted preliminary site, floor, and architectural plans for the property. Much of the existing landscaping on the site is planned to be removed in order to allow for the painting of the building and the painting of the screening wall. The landscaping plan that has been provided by the applicant meets many of the applicable landscaping and buffering requirements of the Kettering zoning code, but a few changes are necessary in order to bring the site into compliance with today's requirements. And again, the plan that we got on Friday for the most part already does that. And then number 2, the proposed conditional use shall conform to the character of the neighborhood. The proposed use is no more intense than other uses that have operated on the subject property in recent years. If anything, the use is less intense than the prior uses that operated on the property. The applicant is also not proposing any changes to the site that would diminish the quality of life in the area. In fact, many of the proposed changes, such as painting the building and the screening wall and updating the landscaping and installing more screening plantings, will improve the conditions on both the subject property and the surrounding area. So that standard is conditionally satisfied. Number 3, adequate utilities shall be provided. This is satisfied. Number 4, adequate measures shall be taken to provide ingress and egress so designed as to prevent traffic hazards and to prevent traffic congestion on public roads. Again, as I stated earlier, this use is not a heavy traffic generator, so this condition is satisfied. Number 5, the proposed use shall not be noxious or offensive by reason of vibration, noise, odor, dust, smoke, or gas. The proposed use will not generate any of these offensive issues, so this requirement is satisfied. Number 6, the proposed use will not injure the use and enjoyment of the property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish or impair property values in the neighborhood. As I've stated before, a lot of what they're proposing to do will improve the site and how the site fits in with the surrounding area. So provided that the recommended conditions are met, the proposed use will have no such impacts when compared to uses already permitted in the B zoning district. And then letter G, the proposed use shall not impede the orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for uses permitted within the zoning district, and the proposed use will have no such effect, so this condition is satisfied. Almost done. Letter H, the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the proposed use shall not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. Staff feels this standard is satisfied based on the plans we've already got for the use, plus some of the conditions that staff is recommending, so this requirement is conditionally satisfied. And finally, the public interest and welfare support in the proposed use shall be sufficient to outweigh the individual interests that are adversely affected by the establishment of the proposed use. And the proposed use will have no such adverse impacts that must be outweighed, so this requirement is satisfied. And staff does have a recommendation, but before I get to that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the commission for Mr. Holmes and Mr. Lackey?
I don't have any.
Ms. Fisher? Mr. Urbis? Mr. Waskey?
I had just one question, and this is, I would address this to the owners. The binoculars that you provide are come from China, is that right? Why China?
Can I excuse you? If you're going to speak, you need to come up to
Please
the
come to the
lectern.
podium. Thank you.
Way to go, Ray.
We'll open the
All right,
public
then we'll
hearing.
just need your name and address one time.
Kevin Bassaro, 2325 Shelterwood Drive in Kettering.
Thank you. Now
So
you-
the question was why China? And unfortunately, binoculars haven't been made in the United States for about 40 years now. It's all made in Asia. Some of the very high-end brands come from Germany and Japan, but the vast majority are made in China. I started the business 25 years ago as a hobby and got connected with a Chinese company I was importing binoculars from their company. Eventually, 2 of those employees broke off and formed their own assembly plant. And they're actually good friends of mine now, and they make binoculars for my company exclusively. So
Okay, I was just curious because
So
of the...
unless you're going to start a little sideline business here, Ray, in the U.S.
No, no, not interested in that.
Now, we did, our binoculars, the big binocular telescopes require a substantial tripod to support them. And those tripods are made out of wood, and we make those here now. Originally, those were also imported from China, but we now make those here. The components are made elsewhere. We get wood from a mill in northern Ohio, and then it's finished by a company in Dayton. We assemble the components in our building, so we do build our own tripods.
Okay, thank you.
Since you're up here, the next order of the hearing is the applicant presentation. So if you want to add to sort of just what you did, or I don't know if you had
I
anything
didn't really
you want.
have a presentation. The last 2 pages of the handout, basically I described kind of in depth exactly who we are and what we do and how we operate. It is a very small business. It's just myself and 3 other employees. Nevertheless, I've been operating out of the former City of Dayton Fire Station at Wayne and Medford for the last 12 years, and we've simply outgrown it. Business is booming in the last few years, and we're just out of space there. So I found this building, and I thought it was really well suited to the way we work. It's bigger than we need, but that's a good problem to have. We can kind of grow into it. So we'll probably add an employee or 2 in the next year. So.
Great. Any questions for the applicant?
No.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing, so if there's anyone out in the audience who wishes to address the commission regarding this application, now is your opportunity. Seeing that no one is wishing to come forward, staff recommendation.
Thank you, Chairman. As stated in the staff report that went out, based upon a review of the proposed use, the existing conditions of the site, and the proposed improvements, staff believes that provided all the recommended conditions are met, that the proposed use complies with the general conditional use criteria and the use-specific standards for warehousing and distribution uses. The proposed use will be less intense than many other uses permitted in the B zoning district. Further, while the use falls within the industrial use group, the proposed use will not utilize any large freight delivery vehicles or loading dock areas. Also, the existing masonry wall provides a large amount of immediate screening between the proposed use and the adjoining residential uses. Plus, the required landscaping will add additional buffering. Due to these reasons, as well as the information provided in the staff report and this presentation, staff recommends that the conditional use for the warehousing and distribution on the property at 3880 Kettering Boulevard be approved with the following conditions. Number 1, large freight vehicles and semi-trucks not be utilized on the site. Number 2, the hours of operation be limited to between the hours of 7:30 a.m. until 9 p.m. And just a note that I included in the report, this condition does not imply that the property needs to be empty, like trash can be emptied and things like that. Only that the main activities, such as loading and unloading trucks, occur during normal business hours due to the proximity of residential uses. So if someone's in the building doing paperwork at 9:30, we're not going to go over there and shut them down. Number 3, no outdoor fabrication or production of any kind occur on the site. Number 4, the applicant agrees to work with staff on finalizing the architectural, site, landscaping, and buffering plans for the site in order to bring the property into compliance with the standards of the Kettering zoning code. Number 5, the applicant agrees to make necessary repairs to the existing masonry wall in order to increase the water resistance of the wall, improve the aesthetics, and stabilize the structure. And finally, number 6, should the wall be damaged or removed in the future, another code-compliant masonry wall measuring at least 6 feet in height must be installed in the same general location as the existing wall. And that's it.
Okay, any commission comments on the recommendation? All right, if not, this is a public hearing, so do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Waske,
Yes?
Mrs. Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Lackey,
Yes.
Mr. Urbas.
Yes.
Mr. Rathman.
Yes. All right. With that, I believe, Mr. Lackey, you have a motion for us.
I do. This is a conditional use approval, application for 3880 Kettering Boulevard. Whereas an application has been received from Kevin Buzero at Dayton Station 15 LLC, agent for the owner of 3880 Kettering Boulevard, requesting approval of a conditional use to allow for the property at 3880 Kettering Boulevard, Kettering, Ohio, 45439, to be used as a warehousing and distribution use, and whereas the property is Zone B, business, and warehousing and distribution uses are allowed, conditional uses in the zoning district, and can be approved through a public hearing process with the Planning Commission, and whereas the Planning Commission has reviewed the facts surrounding this request, including an oral and written report by city staff, which is incorporated herein, and held a public hearing on March the 4th, 2024, and whereas this request constitutes approval of a conditional use to allow the property at 3880 Kettering Boulevard to be used as a warehousing and distribution use, and whereas the Planning Commission adopts the findings of fact presented by staff in their staff report, which is incorporated in this motion. I move that the applicant's request for approval of a conditional use to allow for the use of the property located at 3880 Kettering Boulevard to be used as a warehousing and distribution use be granted with the following conditions. Number 1, large freight vehicles and semi-trucks not be utilized on the site. Number 2, the hours of operation be limited to between the hours of 7:30 a.m. until 9 p.m. Number 3, no outdoor fabrication or production of any kind occur on the site. Number 4, the applicant agrees to work with staff on finalizing the architectural, site, landscaping, and buffering plans in order to bring the property into compliance with the standards of the Kettering zoning code. Number 5, the applicant agrees to make necessary repairs to the existing masonry wall in order to increase the water resistance of the wall, improve the aesthetics, and stabilize the structure. And number 6, should the wall be damaged or removed in the future, another code-compliant masonry wall measuring at least 6 feet in height must be installed in the same general location as the existing wall. End of motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? If not, call the roll, please.
Mr. Lackey,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Urbis.
Yes.
Mr. Woski.
Yes.
Mr. Rathman.
Yes. Very good. There you go. All right. Next item on the agenda is audience participation for items not on the agenda. So if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to address the commission for items not on the agenda, now is your opportunity. Seeing none, well, let's move on to other business. Signing of plats.
We have one to sign from the last meeting we had.
Okay. Communications and reports? All right. Planning Commission comments. Mr. Lackey?
I don't know anything.
Ms. Fisher? Mr. Urbis? Mr. Woski?
I have none.
No way.
Yeah.
All right. You always have something interesting to add.
Not this time.
All right, I have no comments, and with that, we will adjourn this regularly scheduled meeting of the City of Kettering Planning Commission for March 4th, 2024 at 7:33 p.m. until our next regularly scheduled meeting.